The story of personal computing has always been a story of cycles, and right now many people feel like we're standing at the edge of another major shift. For decades, Windows has been the dominant force on desktop computers, shaping how millions of people work, play, create, and connect. Yet as technology evolves, the question that keeps coming back is whether Windows 11 represents the future of computing or whether it marks the beginning of a gradual decline. At the same time, Linux, once considered a niche operating system reserved for programmers and enthusiasts, is experiencing a quiet but powerful rise that is reshaping expectations about freedom, privacy, performance, and control. To understand why people are even asking whether Windows 11's decline is inevitable, we need to look at how the platform has changed in recent years. Windows used to be known primarily as a flexible environment that worked on almost any hardware you could imagine. It was messy, sometimes unstable, but incredibly open in terms of compatibility. Windows 11 introduced stricter hardware requirements, pushing users toward newer processors and features like TPM 2.0 and Secure Boot. While these changes were meant to improve security, many longtime users felt alienated because perfectly functional older machines were suddenly considered obsolete. This created a psychological shift where users began questioning whether they were truly in control of their own computers or whether the operating system was increasingly dictating the terms. Another factor contributing to this sense of change is the growing integration of cloud services and subscription models. Windows 11 is not just an operating system anymore. It's an ecosystem that nudges users toward Microsoft accounts, cloud storage, AI features, and online services. For some people, this feels convenient and modern. For others, it feels like an erosion of the traditional idea of owning a computer outright. The constant presence of recommendations, updates, and background services has led to a perception that Windows is becoming heavier and more opinionated about how people should use their devices. Meanwhile, Linux has been evolving in ways that challenge old stereotypes. There was a time when installing Linux meant wrestling with drivers, compiling software manually, and navigating confusing command-line interfaces. Today, many distributions offer polished graphical environments, easy installers, and software stores that rival or even surpass the user experience of mainstream operating systems. The rise of distributions like Ubuntu, Fedora, Linux Mint, and Arch-based systems has made Linux accessible to a much wider audience, and the increasing popularity of gaming on Linux through technologies like Proton and compatibility layers has removed one of the biggest historical barriers to adoption. The shift toward Linux is not just about features. It's also about philosophy. Many users are drawn to the idea of open-source software because it emphasizes transparency and community-driven development. In a world where privacy concerns are becoming more prominent, the ability to inspect and modify the underlying code of an operating system is appealing. People want to know what their computers are doing, and Linux offers a level of openness that proprietary systems often cannot match. This doesn't mean Linux is perfect or universally better, but it represents a different vision of computing that resonates strongly with certain groups. Gaming has always been considered one of Windows' strongest advantages, yet even this area is experiencing subtle changes. The introduction of the Steam Deck and Valve's investment in Linux-based gaming platforms has accelerated development in graphics drivers and compatibility tools. Suddenly, games that were once exclusive to Windows are playable on Linux with surprisingly good performance. This shift doesn't mean Windows will disappear from gaming anytime soon, but it does signal that the monopoly once enjoyed by a single operating system is no longer absolute. Competition creates momentum, and momentum often leads to innovation. Another element driving Linux's rise is the growing interest in lightweight and customizable computing environments. Many users feel that modern operating systems have become bloated with features they never asked for. Linux allows people to build systems tailored exactly to their needs, whether that means a minimal environment optimized for performance or a visually stunning desktop customized down to the smallest detail. This flexibility appeals to creators, developers, and power users who want their tools to adapt to them rather than the other way around. The influence of artificial intelligence is also shaping the conversation. Windows 11 has integrated AI features deeply into its ecosystem, positioning itself as an AI-first operating system. While some users see this as a glimpse into the future, others worry about increased data collection and reliance on online services. Linux, on the other hand, allows users to experiment with local AI tools and self-hosted solutions without being locked into a single company's vision. As AI becomes more central to personal computing, the contrast between centralized ecosystems and decentralized, open platforms may become even more pronounced. However, it would be an oversimplification to say that Windows is simply fading away while Linux rises uncontested. Windows still dominates in corporate environments, professional software ecosystems, and compatibility with legacy applications. Many industries rely on specialized tools that are deeply tied to Windows infrastructure. For these users, switching operating systems is not just a technical decision, but a logistical challenge that involves training, support, and workflow changes. The inertia of established systems is powerful, and it means that any shift in the personal computing landscape will likely be gradual rather than sudden. The rise of web-based applications is another factor that complicates the picture. As more software moves into the browser, the underlying operating system becomes less important for everyday tasks. People can write documents, edit images, attend meetings, and even develop software without relying on a specific platform. This trend reduces the barriers to experimenting with alternative operating systems because users are less dependent on platform-specific programs. In this environment, Linux gains an advantage because it can run modern browsers efficiently while offering a lighter and more customizable foundation. Community culture plays a surprisingly important role in Linux's growth. Online forums, open-source contributors, and enthusiastic creators have built a welcoming ecosystem that encourage learning and experimentation. Tutorials, videos, and social media discussions have made Linux feel less intimidating to newcomers. At the same time, dissatisfaction with certain changes in Windows has fueled curiosity, prompting users to explore alternatives they might have ignored in the past. When people see others successfully switching to Linux, it reduces the psychological barrier that once kept the platform confined to a niche audience. Hardware manufacturers are also starting to take Linux more seriously. Some companies now offer laptops with Linux pre-installed, and driver support has improved significantly over the years. This reduces one of the biggest historical challenges faced by new Linux users: compatibility. As hardware support improves, the overall experience becomes smoother, and more people are willing to give Linux a chance. This doesn't mean every device works perfectly, but the gap between Windows and Linux in terms of hardware compatibility is shrinking. The concept of ownership versus service is at the heart of the debate about Windows 11's future. Many users feel that modern operating systems are becoming platforms for services rather than standalone tools. Updates arrive automatically, features change frequently, and the interface evolves in ways that sometimes feel disconnected from user feedback. Linux offers a different model where updates and changes are often guided by community discussions and open development processes. This sense of participation creates a feeling of empowerment that resonates with people who value control over convenience. Security is another area where the conversation becomes complex. Windows 11 has introduced stricter requirements and built-in protections designed to defend against modern threats. These measures are often effective, but they can also create friction for users who want to customize their systems freely. Linux approaches security differently, relying on open-source scrutiny and a diverse ecosystem of distributions. Each approach has its strengths and weaknesses, and the debate over which model is better often reflects deeper philosophical differences about how technology should be designed and governed. Education and learning environments are quietly contributing to Linux's growth as well. Many students and developers encounter Linux through programming courses, server environments, or cloud platforms. Once they become comfortable with the system, they begin to see it as a viable alternative for everyday use. The skills learned in these environments transfer easily to personal computing, creating a new generation of users who view Linux not as an experiment but as a practical choice. Mobile computing trends also influence how people think about desktop operating systems. As smartphones and tablets become more powerful, traditional desktop platforms must redefine their roles. Windows 11 tries to bridge the gap between mobile convenience and desktop productivity, while Linux experiments with hybrid environments that blur the lines between devices. The future of personal computing may involve more cross-platform experiences, where the operating system is